Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We're just going to give it another minute and let everyone finish joining us here in the Zoom room, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, let's get started. Welcome everyone to our March member webinar. I am L'Oreal Lance, your Member Services Director, and I am so excited to celebrate Women's History Month with you. We're elated to be joined by Jodi Godfrey, who will provide insights into different tools and resources that agencies can use to attract and retain a diverse workforce. Before I turn it over to Jodi, I just want to make sure that everyone here in the webinar knows that we do have a Women in Transit series that goes throughout the entire year. Taylor just dropped some information in the chat box down there about our ongoings at our expo in regards to our Women in Transportation series. We expect for this year's Women in Transportation reception to be bigger and better than ever. So we hope to see you there. So with that said, take it away, Jodi.
Thank you so much, L'Oreal. So I'm so excited to be here today to talk to you guys about attracting and retaining a diverse transit industry workforce. Before I get too far along, I wanted to start by first thanking CTAA and Taylor for reaching out with this invitation to speak. And I also would be remiss if I didn't thank the Mineta Institute for funding this important topic and providing me with the opportunity to invest my time and research into the topic, which I'm really so passionate about. So the full report that most of this data is coming from can be accessed at the link on the slide, though I'll admit that I've added a few additional findings along the way as I've presented this research on panels and learned from some of the industry experts that are promoting women and minorities in the transportation workforce. I will make sure that Taylor has these slides so that none of you have to frantically feel obliged to jot down that tiny little URL. So we can all just kind of pay attention. So this presentation is going to summarize the findings and recommendations, again, that stemmed from that report. And I'll provide an overview of semi-current transportation setting, because this pesky thing called a pandemic has affected so many things, including the release of new census and labor statistics data. But I'll talk about the data that we do know, and I'll also provide some findings as to why the industry struggles to attract a diverse workforce. And then I'm going to give some recommendations on how you as an individual and how your organization can improve at attracting and retaining a more diverse workforce. So the proportion of women aged 16 and older in the US workforce has grown steadily from, let's say, 29.6% in 1950 to 47% in 2021, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. However, that growth in women's share of the labor force has not been homogeneous among occupations. Women account for like the vast majority of, let's say, preschool through middle school teachers, nurses, secretaries, administrative assistants, receptionists, and then men tend to account for large shares of drivers, laborers, freight stock, material movers, construction laborers, carpenters, technicians, mechanics. So the US Census Bureau American Community Survey, ACS, began tracking occupation by sex back in 2005. At which time women accounted for 12% of transportation occupations. As of 2019, which is the most recent data available currently, we moved all the way up to 15.1%. This includes things like transportation supervisors, material mover workers, aircraft and traffic control operations, motor vehicle operations, rail, water, and other transportation occupations. So I'm sure you noticed that this figure stops at 2019. And like I mentioned previously, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, the census has not yet released any data beyond 2019. However, I can promise you that the share of women in transportation occupations did not significantly jump since the onset of the pandemic. As a matter of fact, if anything, women's participation in the workforce was impacted more severely than men. Many households had to make really tough decisions on, let's say, having one parent stay at home, kind of to offset that lack of childcare availability. And then when families are faced with such challenging decisions, typically the male continues to work because statistically men make more money than women. And so this is an incredibly unfair statistic, which then becomes more unfair in the long run as women then become discredited for lapses in their work history, leading to even greater disparities across gender pay gaps. But I don't want to digress too much. My particular research objectives were focused on summarizing what had already been done in the industry, which led me to this realization that communal goal congruity played a significant role in attracting women to our industry. I also wanted to identify areas where more research could be beneficial because I was taught very young in my research career that all good research points to future potential work. And then finally, my goal within this research is to conclude actionable and implementable findings. That way I have a greater potential to actually influence change. Because let's face it, pie in the sky ideas from research are great to think outside of the box, but if you can't imagine yourself actually playing a role, then it's not really tangible, right? So digging just a little deeper, research revealed that many times it's perception that drives women away from the transportation industry. Communal goals are not typically emphasized. Men tend to be attracted stereotypically to agentic goals, whereas women tend to be attracted to communal goals. This misalignment of goal congruity has been found to be one reason that women tend to avoid or leave the transportation industry. However, there are ways that we can highlight goal congruity processes that contribute to transportation decisions, thus attracting the most talented individuals regardless of gender. I'm going to touch on this a little more in a few slides, but other literature has pointed to the lack of female role models and mentors as one reason that it's difficult to attract women to our transportation industry. And I mentioned these first two because I feel like these two ideas can really help us play a role in increasing the diversity within our teams as individuals. FHWA's Public Roads magazine had an article in 2010 on women in transportation, and it revealed much of what we still see today. While the proportion of women in the workforce has consistently increased since the 1950s, women remain underrepresented, with just 10.4% of civil engineers as women in 2008 and only 13% in the transportation industry. And that was while women made up 46.5% of the total labor force. So we're not represented in the whole labor force, we're just not picking transportation. So the article cited a lack of equity between sexes at the individual level, possibly related to gaps in education or a lack of role model. At the industry level, this contributes to unnecessary limitations on the talent pool and deprives the transportation field of a vital source of talent. So to combat this issue, leaders in the profession were interviewed. And they came up with 5 recommendations. And you'll hear these recommendations repeated throughout. Connect with children and young people through school programs and social media to promote science and engineering. Second, build relationships through networking. Third, participate in industry organizations and take leadership positions. Fourth, institutions would benefit from mentoring young professionals. And finally, recognize that workers have lives outside of their jobs by ensuring flexibility in scheduling, facilitating telework, and avoiding the necessity for long work hours. So in other words, treat people like people, right? The difficulty in attracting women to the transportation industry isn't just a US national phenomenon. Women account for only 17.5% of the workforce in the European Union's urban public transport, and women hold less than 10% of the technical and operational jobs in the European Union. If we focus education and training on necessary skill sets required to be successful in the transportation industry, we will ensure the best qualified candidates are prepared to enter the transportation sector. This also requires that we examine what we consider to be the necessary skills and ensure that each of those skills is actually necessary and not simply an undue burden on applicants. So for example, if a job description requires that an applicant be able to lift a certain weight to be eligible, for instance, then that position should actually require that much weight be lifted. And then if there are tools in place that an employee will be able to use to offset the weightlifting requirements, then those offsets should be considered in the job requirement descriptions. The Women's Bureau defines a non-traditional occupation as one where less than 25% of the workforce is women. And research has pointed to many occupations, such as lawyers, physicians, mail carriers, all of which were traditionally male-dominated and improved at attracting women, transforming their perception from non-traditional for women. I really love this picture here that shows the female bus driver. So in the war, right, women were stepped up to take over what were traditionally men's jobs. And so women became bus drivers. And now we're hoping that more and more women will be bus drivers, right? So why is women involvement important? This is really, it's kind of a funny question for me to even ask this, right? But in reality, all great research points to the answer of why does it even matter in the first place? So why is it so important to have women at the problem-solving table? Why do we really need a voice? Susan Kurland, from the former US Assistant Secretary of Aviation and International Affairs, was quoted saying, "Women possess unique perspectives to the issues that are being faced by the modern global transportation system." Further research points to the importance of diversity in collaborative work to provide varying perspectives and approaches to problem solving. So let's dive into just one subtopic for a minute: security. Men and women tend to think differently about factors that impact a sense of security, with women in general being more cognizant of factors like lighting, of line of sight, volumes of people, etc. Beyond security, there are other perspectives that women bring to the table that are typically different than their male counterparts, like stroller access, comfort, or ease of use, all of which are really important in designs and shouldn't be overlooked. So gender equality, and more specifically, gender diversity in the workforce, are the key to economic growth required for companies to win the talent war. And research after research has pointed to this. While the current workforce is combating challenges associated with the aging population and delayed or imbalanced succession planning, it's more important than ever to ensure that the talent pool encompasses all qualified candidates. And women are the largest pool of untapped labor globally. So what have others done to attract women to our industry? The first resounding theme is to connect with young people. This can be done in so many different ways. One way is to sponsor field trips. You could provide counselors and teachers with information related to opportunities for women in transit. We could sponsor summer internships or summer-long apprenticeships for high school or college students, and connect with local universities in your communities. You can reach out to any school of engineering or public policy or planning and let them know that you're interested in providing some hands-on experience in the field for their students. And you will have, quickly, you'll have an opportunity to form mutually beneficial relationships and expose our youth leaders to the transit industry. This doesn't have to be, each of these things doesn't have to be an organization-wide effort. Every year I make sure that I go around to all of the elementary schools that I can fit into my schedule for the Great American Teach-In, and I tell them about all the fun and exciting things that I get to do as an engineer. So some more tips to connect with young people include taking advantage of social media platforms like YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. I can promise you that you are shaping perceptions with your social media. And if you're completely avoiding social media like the plague, then it is also shaping perceptions. I'll touch a bit more on the importance of perceptions in just a few slides. But I also think it's important to take advantage of the tools that are available to you so you're not having to like reinvent the wheel every time, right? So leverage existing programs like the FHWA Summer Transportation Internship Program for diverse groups, the National Summer Transportation Institute Program, the Garrett A. Morgan Transportation Technology Education Program, or the National Academy of Sciences Engineer Girl Program are just a few examples. And if you aren't aware of any of these, I encourage you to Google them and get more information, or send me an email. Okay, so aside from connecting with young people, the literature also pointed to the importance of networking and participating in professional organizations. The more involved we are, the more we are able to incite change. So in other words, benefits will be proportional to the efforts that you invest. I feel like I've been hearing that my whole life. So when I say participate, I'm saying it's not enough to simply pay an annual due and read your newsletters. I'm encouraging each of you to attend meetings and to socialize with your peer professionals. Volunteer when assistance is needed. Run for a board or officer position. All of these things are going to increase the effectiveness of your networking efforts, while also increasing the visibility of women as leaders. And so research has found that that visibility is inviting to young women who may be deterred or intimidated by the lack of diversity typically presented in the transit sector. So I took this leadership class a few years ago, and they started out the whole class with this line, "What you perceive is." And then they paused for a long time, and then they said it again, "What you perceive is." And at first I pushed back, like, no, perceptions aren't reality, but in reality, what you perceive as reality is how you will react, right? And so what you perceive is. It took me a while, but it really makes sense. One key aspect to help attract women to the transportation industry is the ability to highlight the congruent communal goals that can be accomplished through transportation work. Studies have shown that women generally prefer to pursue communal goals in their career decisions, while men, again, stereotypically are attracted to pursuing agentic goals. Agentic goals are goals of independence, of status, while communal goals are typically focused on like working with and helping the community, helping others in your community. The top occupations for women in 2015, according to BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, are elementary and middle school teachers, registered nurses, secretaries. And if you think about it, those are all aligned with communal goal orientation, right? Alternatively, the top occupations for men are sales workers, truck drivers, managers, supervisors, laborers, which all can be aligned with agentic goal congruity. So the true catch here is that if we can get more people that align with communal goals in leadership positions, then the communities that we serve would benefit tremendously. We need to remove the stereotype of the necessity to be a workaholic to qualify as a manager or supervisor, because all great jobs provide their employees an opportunity to live a life outside of their place of employment. After all, we should all strive to be people and have healthy work-life balances. So when personal motivations are understood, it's then possible to focus on the types of tasks that fulfill these motives, resulting in a more satisfied team of highly motivated individuals. So you may have heard the saying, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it's stupid. I think a similar philosophy holds true to most things in life, and it may be that the person that seems to be the least productive is just assigned tasks that don't align with their personal goals. So we need to know what motivates our employees. So what should we do? Well, don't assume, ask. and then understand that not everyone actually knows what motivates them. So it may help to assign a range of tasks to determine true motivations. It's also important to remember that motives change over time, and that tendency to change motives highlights the importance of scheduled surveys or interviews of employees so that you can gauge their satisfaction with their duties performed. More importantly, if responses to those surveys or interviews are not favorable, it is imperative that agencies make changes or adjustments to show that they care and that they're actually listening to their employees. So while anyone in the transit industry understands the undeniable connection with communal goals, it's necessary to alter the perception of the industry to match the reality. We need to highlight the impact we make on sustainability, on food availability, medical innovations, mobility options to improve quality of life of underserved populations. I mean, if you think about it, we are a community of heroes. From the research, the bar is set pretty low. In one experiment, women who learned that scientists spend the day working with others as opposed to working alone exhibited particularly strong increases in their attitudes towards science careers. I mean, guys, they just don't want to be alone. That's the lowest bar possible, right? So closing on the communal goal congruity topic, if we highlight the communal processes that contribute to transit decisions, we can attract the most talented individuals regardless of gender or ethnicity. And if we can complement lessons about STEM with concepts on how these knowledge sets can improve the quality of life or can save a life, that's how we can attract those that are interested in helping others. And we can increase their motivation to learn more. So to effectively increase diversity in the workforce of the transit industry, it's important to consider not only the key aspects that are required to attract women to the industry, but also the key aspects that are necessary to promote and retain women once they're attracted to our field, so that we don't lose them, right? While attracting women to the industry presents unique challenges, overcoming those challenges will be misguided if the same effort and resources aren't focused on retaining those women. Research points to the importance of mentors, the importance of clear and concise paths to promotion that reduce the potential for unintentional bias, and the importance of promoting the minority voice as 3 strategies to retain top talent. It is important that organizations set specific goals to attract a diverse workforce. This goes way beyond simply providing a diversity statement on your company website. If your agency wants to promote and retain women, it's important that they adhere to a plan to accomplish the goals that they set. Accountability and communication are important components to every diversity goal. Other research reinforces the notion that women who have female mentors and role models are more likely to remain in the industry. For example, a multi-year longitudinal study that followed 150 incoming female students majoring in engineering at a public university showed that women who received mentoring and guidance from other successful women in the industry were more likely to remain in the industry a year after graduation. Women that received no mentoring and women paired with male mentors both shown steep declines in feelings of belonging in engineering from the beginning to the end of their first year. Alternatively, women with female mentors reported stable feelings of belonging. And so on that note, I'm going to take this opportunity to do a shameless plug and beg for you all to take our survey. It should take you no more than 10 minutes. And it asks questions related to your sense of belonging, your promotion opportunities, and other characteristics about your place of employment. Our hopes, when I say our, I'm speaking on behalf of like an entire collaborative research team that includes Cutter, the center that I work for, and it also includes the Mineta Transportation Institute in San Jose, California, ITS America, ITE, Tennessee State University, the Southeastern Transportation Workforce Center, and the Mobility XX initiative. Our hopes are that we will get a decent sample size of respondents and we'll be able to make some meaningful conclusions from the responses. So please take the survey and then stay tuned for the report with survey results to be published in the Transportation Research Board's TRR journal. Okay, sorry. Now pivoting back to the completed research. Retention of mothers is another place that literature has pointed to opportunities for improvement. Earlier, we were talking about communal goal congruity and how we should not only ask what individuals' motives are, but we should also understand that motives change over time. As a mother myself, I can attest to the truthfulness of this statement. Parenthood changes motivations. In 2009, a study revealed that about a quarter of mothers of preschoolers were leaving the transportation industry due at least partly to the lack of family-friendly cultures. So how do we improve that statistic? Well, we offer flexible schedules, generous maternity leave policies, because it's important to remember that employees are people too. We should provide opportunities for advancement rather than excuses. An agency should consider providing help with childcare, or another idea is to provide the actual ability to use the earned time off without a fear of retribution or retaliation, which is a really sad one that I hear a lot. So, as I said earlier, all good research points to future research ideas. So 2 of my many suggestions include specific research that focus on successful balancing practices for both women and organizations, with actual examples of policies that can be implemented to encourage healthy work-life balance. I'd also love to see some training developed related to cultural change as beneficial guidance for all employment levels to ensure that diversity inclusion is prevalent organization-wide. So in conclusion, effective change is organizational culture is dependent upon the holistic development, implementation, and enforcement of diversity promoting policies. The culture and the perception of the culture of an organization is the most important consideration when focusing on attracting a diverse, talented workforce. And remember that culture is not a policy, a sign on the wall, or an acceptance letter signed when you're hired. The promotion and retention of women in the transportation industry is multifaceted, and it requires holistic approaches and dedication from all levels of employment. So transitioning now into the promised actionable recommendations that each of us can do, either as individuals or that we can encourage change within our organizations. First, connect with young people to promote the industry as a desirable career option. Mentor and provide opportunities for others to mentor as well. The benefits of sharing success stories and providing advice and guidance and prompt answers to mentees really cannot be overstated. The second recommendation is to encourage participation in professional organizations, especially leadership participation and networking event attendance. It's not enough, like I said earlier, to just pay the dues and read the emails. You have to show up and speak up. Encouraging participation in extracurricular activities provides opportunities to improve confidence and increase visibility in the industry. That visibility and representation is mutually beneficial and necessary for advancement opportunities. The third recommendation is to promote educational and career opportunities, focusing especially on minority recruitment efforts, and not just in college, but technical school education as well. Encourage the support of minority-focused scholarships, internships, and awards to increase the recruiting talent pool so that minorities are afforded the opportunities that would otherwise not be possible. Educational promotion may require changes in educational tools or traditional information delivery methods in order to ensure that there's a focus on the skills that are needed in the industry. Specifically, soft skills, such as public speaking, could be incorporated into curricula without jeopardizing any kind of accreditation requirements. The next recommendation is to create a gender-balanced panel for all final decisions pertaining to hiring. Presenting a gender-balanced hiring panel is one way to show immediate dedication to diversity while also ensuring that the hiring decisions are not biased. Next, intentionally promote desired perceptions. So you should deliberately advertise your agency's support of diversity through as many outreach opportunities as possible. This could include professional organizations and association meetings, social media, newsletters and magazine articles. Promote the perception that is desired rather than allowing outsiders to define your public perception. Next, promote the communal goal congruity of public transit. Personally, this is why I love to focus on safety. Many bus operators, safety supervisors, engineers, planners, policymakers, researchers, and scientists are all fulfilling personal communal goals through their careers. And if we can promote this, we could probably help to attract more women to our industry. The next recommendation is to develop and adhere to a defined succession plan to ensure that there's no bias in promotion decisions. With clear promotion guidance that's inclusive of specific requirements for advancement, there is no room for unintentional bias in the promotion process within the agency. Not seeing a path to advancement is a common reason provided by many women who have left the transportation industry. Recommendation 8, don't reinvent the wheel. Invest in practices and best practices and syntheses that collect and compare public transit agencies' policies and implementation successes and their failures so that you can develop and promote a toolbox of applicable guidance. The next recommendation, when you want to know, ask. Conduct or participate in recurring surveys to understand the effectiveness of cultural diversity efforts in place. Sharing practices that were ineffective is just as important as sharing practices that were effective, and recognizing that you understand those. The 10th recommendation, ensure policies allow employees to take earned time off without a fear of retribution or loss of work availability upon return. Policies that are family friendly and allow for the time off, for instance, after childbirth and other dependent care considerate policies will all contribute to retention rates of qualified talent. To me, this one is well-rounded in just saying treat people, not just like employees. And then finally, don't discredit women with lapses in their employment history unfairly, especially as women transition back into the workforce post-pandemic. Don't undervalue the female workforce as they return to work so that we're not contributing to increased future wage gaps. Change has to happen at all levels of an organization to be effective. We need buy-in from the top and from the bottom. And so with that, I want to thank CTAA again for the invitation to present today. And thank you all for listening to me for all that time. And we'll open the floor for questions. I see a few have come in. And I'll just say, if you're not comfortable asking in this forum, to please jot down my email. It's a much shorter URL there. And shoot me an email message and connect with me on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much, Jodi. That was so insightful. We do have a few questions and comments, I'll say. You mentioned investing in yourself, which I believe is very important. So Taylor is actually going to drop the link to some of our intensive courses that we have at Expo. One of them is about becoming a better trainer, and all of them essentially are investing in yourself and your knowledge of the industry, which, as Jodi mentioned, most people want to kind of climb that corporate transportation ladder. So that would set yourself up well. Gina did have a question, and that question was, what does transportation include in the study? All or specialized, airlines, medical? Can you give us some insights into that, Jodi?
Sure, yeah. So for this particular study, all of the statistics that were used are the Bureau of Labor Statistic definition of transportation occupation. And so I mentioned them a little bit earlier, but the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, outlines everything specifically in there that's included. I'll say in the survey that we are currently conducting with all the other universities and organizations, that's including every kind of transportation professional you can think of. So we're not limiting it to just the Bureau of Labor Statistic definition of a transportation professional.
Thank you. And your tips were fabulous, especially as it relates to childcare concerns. In fact, the president of our board of directors actually has a childcare facility on her campus, if you will, where all the buses kind of come and go and the staff sit. And it's actually one of her larger selling points for employment benefits. So that's something to consider. If you're out there, maybe you have a little space and you can bring a childcare facility onto your campus, just a selling point. And Jodi, can you tell us a little bit about where your research is going, where you see it going in the future?
Yeah, I'm always looking for anything actionable. And so right now we're focusing on kind of feelings of belonging. And so I guess I'm trying to figure out every tangible way that I can pull more women into the industry. So I'm currently the co-chair of the Women in ITE Institute of Transportation Engineers committee. And so I work with a whole task of women there to try to encourage, everyone from kids to college students, even to professionals, sometimes you're looking to change your career in the middle of your life, right? And so we're looking to attract transportation professionals from every opportunity possible.
Well, thank you so much, Jodi, and thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Again, Jodi's details will be shared with everyone here on the webinar, and so enjoy the rest of Women's History Month.
Yay, thanks, everybody. Thanks so much.
Bye.